go over the bones of the head, I'm using this model because this is a model you could likely see on your test. There are 22 bones total. There are 14 bones in the face, and then on the skull back here, there are 8 bones that you would be accounted to know. So on this model, let's go over the ones that they could highlight. So from this area down, you can start down here. This is your mandible. It's 1 bone. You have your maxilla, that's the right side, the left side, that makes up majority of the face area over here. Then you've got your zygomatic bone, which is over here, and zygomatic bone over here. So that's that's the right, that's the left, that's there are 2 bones. If you look inside the nose cavity over here, you actually have, in the nasal cavity, you have the vomer. So that's this bone leading over here. It's actually the front of another bone called the ethmoid bone. But here you go, that's the vomer. And then if you look on the right side here, you see a little bump. That's another bone. That bone is called inferior nasal conchae. And then again, there's another one on this side. So that's the left inferior nasal conchae, and that's the right one. This is a nasal bridge, and it does separate in 2 sides. And that's the right side, that's the left side. And then in your orbit area, you actually have the lacrimal bone, and that's the left one, and that's the right one. Lacrimal, that's kind of where your tear ducts kind of are in your inner canthus area. I don't know if under the light you could see it a little better here. It's segmented a little bit. So you may have like a number on a sticky note that's over here with a toothpick, and then on your test answer sheet, you're gonna have to say, hey, according to that number, that's a lacrimal bone. If you look on this side over here, we could go to the skull. Now they're not going to really go into the skull on this model, but they may just cover the basics over here, and that's what you're going to see it for. So let's start with the frontal. So that's a frontal bone. You should definitely get that one right. That's where your forehead is. Your parietal, if you go down your jagged suture lines down the middle over here you have the left parietal and the right parietal. The parietal literally means border. So think about that like the key borders on the top of your head. And on the back over here, you actually have the occipital. Inside here, you have your eyesight and so forth. It's controlled back here as well. Now, you could see your temporal. It's a jagged cutout over here. That's the right side of the temporal. And then you also have a separate bone over here, which is the left temporal. That's this area. Now, in a small display, in this small crevice here, you could kind of see that all the bones kind of converge over here, and this is the sphenoid bone, and they may put a sticker here and you may have to answer that. So just remember the corner behind the zygomatic, inside intersecting with all of these, in this little niche here, you have the sphenoid bone. Sphenoid bone actually travels the whole length of the skull. So that's also sphenoid bone. So there is no right, there is no left. That's just one sphenoid bone, and it communicates all the way through. There are a bunch of bones over here that they may not even ask you about. It's just the way that it presents very well in some areas, and some bones aren't very visible. So first of all, they will ask you about the last 2 facial bones. There are 14 total. So this is the palatin bone. It's separated in the left and the right through these sutures over here. So if you take your tongue, run it through the roof of your mouth towards the back area, you would be feeling the palatin bone. So there's left side and right side. Just superior to it, you have the vomer here. You do have the ethmoid around there and the sphenoid. They're not going to ask you about that on this model, most likely. They would ask you about these areas because this is so very pronounced. Now, first of all, they'll ask for the foramen magnum, which is this giant hole over here. Foramen, remember, just means hole or opening. This is where medulla oblongata comes down, spinal cord comes up. Now, you do have these condyles on the ridge over here. Now, these condyles are part of the occipital bone, which remember covers the occipital lobe. So carrying that forward, these are the occipital condyles. So you have the left side and the right side. Then if you look over here, you have this projection. This is called the styloid process. And there's another one here, styloid process. Always think about stylus, which is kind of what you use on an iPad and such. Looks like a pen. That's kind of what this reminds me of. And instead of stylus, it's styloid. There is a foramen they may ask you about.
It's right over here as well. It's in this little valley here, and there's another one over here. Just a mirror image of each other. This one gets its name by the styloid, and this here is part of the temporal bone. This part here is called the mastoid. So it's the styloid, mastoid, foramen. Styloid, mastoid, foramen.